Hi there, it's Callum Newman from Fat Tail Investment Research here with today's regular YouTube video. Your normal host Woody is out of action today with a crook throat, he says. So I'm going to take the hot seat and interview our man on the ground as far as technology goes. Charlie, how are you, buddy?
Good morning, Carl. How are you, mate?
Good, buddy. Now, in today's article, you're writing about space, which is actually of interest to me. But you made point that there have been two big things happen lately in terms of the commercialization of space and the big opportunity that's presenting over the next decade. Can you tell us what those two important things were?
Yeah, last Friday we had two amazing rocket launches almost within hours of one another. We had the second major SpaceX booster catch. So they had a huge rocket launch over in the US with the payload actually blowing up. But that was less important because that was kind of new technology. But more importantly, their Starlink booster was caught for the second time. So that's massive, massive news. And then the other bit of news was the Jeff Bezos Blue Origin project launching for the first time after many years of delay. So that's two huge orbits or launches within hours of one another. So the space race is really heating up. It's kind of what I'm arguing.
The question that sprung into my mind, from your perspective, do you think that this new space race, as you call it, will be driven by private industry like the big tech giants and the squillionaires over in the US? Or will the US government still be a big driving force behind this?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that the US government is still going to be a large part of the driver behind this. Project Artemis is obviously pumping billions of dollars into the industry to kind of bolster some of the smaller names. But if we look further ahead, it's certainly going to be a private first push. We're seeing a lot of private equity flowing into the space. Something like 80% of it is venture capital and private money coming in there. So it is a lot of money there, but still the government is there backing up a lot of the smaller players to kind of enter into the space. So government for now, private in the future.
You make a pretty big call in the piece where you say that in our lifetimes we'll see mining and manufacturing and tourism in space. Are you game enough to put a timeline on that?
Uh, well, I think it really depends. But let's just say, am I put a timeline on it? I would say within the next 10 years, you'll be seeing space tourism, definitely. Space mining is a little bit more of a question mark on that one, just because of there's a lot of more complicated moving parts within getting it back into orbit. But I would say that within the decade, you'll be seeing a lot of that action that I outlined in the piece will be coming to fruition. And the primary reason for that is simply the cost, right? The cost to bring things into the orbit has come down from tens of thousands of dollars per kg, and it's now moving into the tens of dollars per kg. And a lot of that comes to do with the reusability of the heavy booster launches because those giant boosters are, many stories high, some of them 13 stories high of just pure metal and very expensive boosters. So being able to reuse those is the first step in bringing the costs down immensely. And so I think that's really the big thing, which SpaceX first kind of showed with its technology, and now more and more people are following that. That's one part of the huge thing. The second part is also the idea of just more advanced manufacturing and the idea that we've now got micro satellites that are being launched. So you can have many satellites in the single payload, and those satellites have got, much more dense circuitry. And so you've got things like developing nations, small companies that are able to bring on all these kind of micro array satellites, which means that you've got lots more industry in space, should we say. I mean, look at Starlink, for example. Have you ever used Starlink, by the way?
I haven't, no, but I read about it a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an absolutely incredible service. So I'm from rural New Zealand. And so where I'm from, there's still no cell phone reception, right? So a lot of people out there still are using Starlink right now, and they have better speeds than I do in the middle of Melbourne.
And do you think Starlink will IPO this year?
That's a good question. There has been rumors of it. I have got no inside information on that in that space, but there are certainly rumors that they will be looking into IPO this space. They're doing a lot of things like tidying up their accounting, which is usually a pretty good sign that they're leading towards IPO, but who knows what will happen.
In terms of investment opportunities, is it a case then of looking at domestic US firms, or are there international ways to play this trend? Because it's mostly out of America, right?
It is mostly out of America, but there are still some players elsewhere. For the ASX, if we start with an ASX example, there's a number of companies. I can't mention some of them because they're within the Alpha Tech Trader portfolio, but there are certainly companies that are dealing with kind of titanium, because a lot of these products within the space industry are obviously titanium based because it has the highest known strength to weight
Yep.
ratio of any known metal. So because of that, there's a lot of work within the titanium space, which is really impressive. The thing you have to think about in these things is if you imagine, for the example on Friday, if something went wrong with a piece on that giant SpaceX heavy booster, so say they're doing their tests in the day before and they found that a part of it was faulty, what they have with these new technologies is a lot of what they call additive manufacturing, right? So they're using laser engineered net shaping. So what they're able to do is say, hey, this tiny little part is broken. They'll send the files to these companies and they'll have a 24-hour, less than 24-hour turnaround where they'll just be able to quickly use titanium powders, make the product and send it straight back to the people so that these single little problems aren't holding up these multi-billion-dollar launches. So there's a lot of small companies within the titanium additive manufacturing space that are doing really, really well just on the back of the growth within the space.
I know. Just there's multiple small caps on the ASX that are targeting that big spending,
Mm.
the aero defense
Yep.
sector of the US, and it's funny. People worry about the big US deficits, and quite rightly, but at the same time, that all some of that government money that's flowing out is going into the defense industry and the space industry. So companies
Yeah.
can be on the end of that. So
Exactly, and it's fairly well insulated if you look at where Trump and the Doge efficiency have been targeting. Very little of that is looking in this space, so it is fairly insulated from this idea of grand efficiencies and the cutbacks that we might see within the Trump administration. I think you're still going to expect that even if there are 20% cutbacks, there's still a lot of money slushing around that many people are able to take up. So that's a few ASX examples, but as you were saying, a lot of it is US based. There are a few, as I mentioned in the article, a Toronto based company that's doing very well, but a lot of it you have to do look within the S&P 500.
cool. Well, it's a massive and fascinating theme. So I'm pumped to keep following it. All right, Charlie, thank you for your time today. Of course, if you're watching, you can read Charlie's article by clicking the link below. Give a thumbs up to the video if you enjoyed it. And I guess we'll catch up with you next week, will you? Or does Dincy normally do the Monday shift?
I think we'll catch up next week, and then he's back from his holiday.
Beauty. All right, I guess we'll be talking crypto soon. We'll
We
do it
certainly
again
will.
soon. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, mate.